Je vais juste voir.
I think we're live.
I think we are.
Hello, everyone. It's our first time using the tool, so bear with us a bit, but I think we're actually 1 minute in advance. So.
Yeah, we are. And we have some
Nice.
very early people. Cool. Awesome. I see more people coming in. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, welcome. Can you guys hear us well? Is the chat already usable? Drop a hi in the chat if you can hear us well.
Yay.
Okay.
Great. Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay, let's wait a bit before we start.
While we wait, drop a line in the chat if you're a customer or if you're a prospect or if it's the first time you've heard of Dust and somehow you ended up on this webinar by chance.
Great.
Okay. So many customers.
Yeah.
Who is here?
So this is actually family, right? It's just close friends.
All right.
Awesome.
And another question, final question maybe. I think after that we can start. Who's in InfoSec, information security, and who is not, I guess. So you can just drop InfoSec or not InfoSec in the chat. Okay.
Okay, lots of experts then. Okay, cool. We'll adapt it. Fantastic.
All right.
Should we wait again until 4, 5 maybe, and then start? We have 30 minutes, guys.
Yeah.
So
We've already hacked the webinar because we promised a demo, but since most of you guys are actually InfoSec, it's more interesting to spend more time in Q&A because I imagine everyone's going to batter me with questions, and I'll do my best to answer all of them. So we can wait a bit more.
yeah.
While we wait, if you guys already have some questions on hand, drop them in the chat. This way I'll try to prioritize them. after. I have lots of notes, but as you can imagine, discussing AI security in 30 minutes is a bit complicated. So we'll triage because this is what we're good at.
Cool. All right, I think we
Okay,
can start, right?
let's do this.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for joining and welcome. I think most of you know Dust, obviously, but just for some quick presentation, we'd like to present ourselves as the operating system for AI agents, as you must know. And as you know as well, today AI landscape is quite fragmented, and so companies I know face a choice between general purpose chatbots like ChatGPT and building everything custom from scratch. And Dust really provides the infrastructure layer that lets you build and operate AI agents at scale, connected to your company's knowledge and tools with proper security and governance built in. So we're not just another AI tool in your stack, we're really the foundational layer, the operating system on which AI powered organizations like yours are running. So above all, we're a secure AI platform, and this webinar is dedicated to how we can help you build and deploy these agents securely. So, for the agenda, we're going to be digging into what's the security blind spot today in AI adoption, and then Zed will go through a deep dive on security architecture at Dust, and we'll leave some space for Q&A, as we said. So really the question of the security blind spot is that something that should keep you up at night. So when was the last time you guys checked what your AI agents actually do and not what they say? So most of us secured AI like we secure email. We scan for sensitive data leaks. We check who can access what documents, monitor the output, etc. And that worked fine when AI was just answering questions. But something has changed recently is that your agents aren't just searching anymore. They're booking meetings for you, they're updating Salesforce, they're approving expenses, calling APIs across your entire infrastructure. And so they're acting like privileged employees at machine speed 24/7. And so the problem that we're putting in here is that most enterprises deployed AI agents, but only a few have AI specific security controls. So we're still using 2021 playbooks for 2026 problems. And the gap between those passive chatbots we think we secured and the autonomous agents actually running in production, that's what we call the security blind spot, so the security paradox. So closing it will require to rethink everything from permissions to authorizations for a world where AI agents can act and not just answer. And so here's where our questions are going to come deeply, and that Zed is going to try to answer as precisely as possible for you guys. So let's dig in. Over to you, Zed.
Thank you. So I guess since most of you guys are customers, you know a bit about our permission model, but I'll go over it quite quickly. The idea is in Dust you have a dual layer permission model. What it means is that we figured out that by definition, AI is insecure. AI security isn't binary. It's literally risk management. No system is ever going to be perfectly secure. So the question is not, is this 100% safe, but how do I manage my residual risk? And is this platform that I'm about to use as safe, is not safer than alternatives? So this is your question. On our like on our side, on our end, our question is how do we build a vault as opposed to like a file cabinet, basically that everyone can just access and where enterprise search becomes I'm searching everyone else's data. So the first part for us is really like all about workspace isolation first. So like logical separation of workspaces and clients. and even internally, because your departments might not be sharing sensitive documents. An example of this is for the AI blind spot, usually the enterprise search blind spot would be something like at Dust, can you find me any document with a title of confidential or anything related to budgets of 2026, for example? And I would be asking the agent this as an engineer in a company where the culture is pretty siloed and I'm not expected to have any financial data on hand. So to prevent this, we have the space layer. So spaces are, as their name imply, a scoped area where you get to do data curation and where the knowledge feeds specific agents, agents that can only be accessed by people who have access to those spaces. And the way we um, help you guys achieve this is either by, as usual, adding individual users to spaces. And this is an admin only action operation, or for bigger companies, you can use scheme provisioning, basically. So you've already done your data governance, you already have like an IDP, you've already provisioned users, you already have your groups ready, and you just want to import those. And in some cases, you don't even want to import all of the groups, you only want to import some of them. So this is already supported. When those spaces are live, you might also decide, as Nella said, that the old playbook of AI being all about enterprise search is now outdated. Now you expect your agent to also be able to correlate some information and maybe create a new document in your Google Drive, or maybe like a new page on Notion, or edit something in place. So you're going to be adding tools. So the tool layer is very important in Dust. And the way we approach this, for some of you in the InfoSec field, by definition, we know that MCP servers are really just fancy APIs that are meant to be called by agents. And agents for us just means autonomous bots. Basically, that's a simplified, reduced model. So how do I trust this more than I would trust, say, a human? Why would I give it, for example, an API key with admin permissions? Why would I do this? Why would I open the security perimeter and degrade my threat model by giving access to agents? This is the question most of you are basically asking yourselves. And the answer is you don't have to be. You don't have to do that. Because the way you can approach the usage of MCP servers now in 2026 is that you can grant the permissions of your individual users. So you do not need to create a service account that will then perform operations on the behalf of your user and be a single identity that you cannot oversee. So you would not be able to see in the audit logs on the end of the provider who assumed that permission. We use OAuth. So with those user tokens, whether I'm talking to Dust and asking him to post a Slack message, or Nella is doing that, you would see it both on Slack, and obviously you would see it as well in their logs, and also in ours. That's the basic view of how the tool permission layer works. There's a few more things to it. The second part of this is since we're discussing things like other collaboration tools like Slack, Notion, Google Drive, SharePoint, permissions are not equal and actions are not all equal across the board. Reading information in most cases is fine. So it would be what we call low stake. But posting a message or sending an email by definition is high stake. The way to think around this low stake, high stake sort of system is to think about it in terms of blast radius. Like if an employee of mine is accessing company information in a space where he's already allowed to access that information because we've only mapped your existing files to the space, then there's no more risk than for that employee actually performing the search in Google Drive directly. It's equivalent. You didn't make it more risky for them to call an agent for that. But asking an agent to send an email without supervision, that's definitely bad. And if you actually put this as low risk, you might end up with emails in the wild. And as we know, you can't really press undo on sending an email. So you end up in a loop of loss of trust with potential prospect, customers, colleagues. And this is sort of what we're trying to prevent. So stakes all across the board. In Dust, when you add a tool, an MCP server, you get to decide which capabilities you're keeping, so which tools. So if you want to deactivate the post message, you can. If you actually disagree with our sane defaults, so for example, posting a message is high, but you're very tech forward and you're not afraid of sending Slack messages across the board because you're very transparent internally, or maybe you're a really small shop and everyone knows about everything in your company, then you can lower it to low if you want. And the difference in stakes means that in one end, you have the human out of the loop. So you could have the agent do everything end to end. You could configure a trigger that runs every morning, checks all your emails, drafts replies, and for the very tech forward of you, actually also sends them, basically. So this is very tech forward, and obviously it's not the security maturity that most companies have when they think about AI security. So by default, you get high stakes, but you can change that. And if you even think that your employees shouldn't even be able to send messages, you can also, again, deselect some of the capabilities and remove them from the get-go. That's the tool layer approach. And we already have a couple questions on that. So how does Dust ensure that there's no vulnerability on its side that would allow a third-party attacker to gain unauthorized access to my space layer and its data? The same way we would in any kind of SaaS. When you store data in Jira or where you store data in Google Drive, you're basically doing this in a database. And this is going to be old school secure architecture. So you expect the database to not be accessible from the internet. You also expect to have things like least privilege for the employees who have access to it. You expect things like supply chain life cycle profile that's clean. So the company behind it is actually doing their updates, staying on top of vulnerabilities out in the wild. And then you have like your regular pen tests. We do a lot of internal ones. We have lots of agents constantly battering us. And we also do external pen test a couple times a year. We have the mandated one required for SOC 2 that we give the report on demand, but we also run a couple more of them. A lot of them are also performed by tech forward companies that use AI agents to do pen tests. So we're constantly bombarded, basically. I'm kind of new to Dust. Can you tell us briefly where we find the stakes management for tools? Yeah, for sure. So if you're an admin in Dust, you go to Spaces, and then in Spaces, you're going to get a list of your connectors. So since you're a bit new, I'm going to discuss the nuance a bit. So a connector is basically a way of ingesting data from outside Dust into Dust. And the reason why you would use a connector as opposed to a tool is that the connector ingests that data to put it in our vectorized database. So if you've ever heard of the term RAG, it goes in the RAG. And the reason why you would want to use a RAG, engineers would explain it better than I can, but it's because enterprise search, anything that's considered more deep, so having an agent go in the wild for like a couple hours on your own company data, this is going to happen on a RAG, on a vectorized database. It's not going to happen with an MCP tool because MCP tools are making API calls that have timeouts, that are rate limited, and with a scoring pattern that we do not control. So it's difficult to correlate information from different areas. In the same area for the spaces, you also have a section called tools. And there you can see all the tools already configured. You can add more. you can clone tools. So you could have n instances of Slack. You can have a Slack read only, only used for engineers. You can have a Slack read and post used, for example, for HR things, because it's in a space where it only has frequently asked questions surrounding anything around compensation, um, PTO, things like this. So you get to decide what you build in Dust. And this is really why we say that we're an operating system and a platform. We're not trying to impose any kind of vision about how to work and your ways of working. We're just giving you the tools to do this. And we do have opinions in terms of security, because the goal for us is really to just simplify this. I hope that answers your question, Clément. I think that's a yes.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. Um,
Do we have other questions? You first just drop them in the chat. Okay, great. Thanks. um,
yeah, either questions, or I'm going to be dropping InfoSec punchlines starting soon. Um, if you guys want, we can discuss things like OWASP, Gen AI, vulnerabilities. I'm surprised no one asked me about prompt injections yet. I guess most of you already know that prompt injection is unsolved. If not, I'm here to tell you that prompt injection is unsolved. Uh, if you came here expecting me to claim that Dust is unhackable, you'll be disappointed. Every company is hackable to a point. What we're really trying to do is build a fortress, defending depth, staying on top of what's happening in the field. That's my job. Yeah, because we're not about perfect defenses. We're about the acceptable risk and rapid response. And so um, shoot questions if you have some. Otherwise, I'm moving on to the next punchline.
yeah, we have one question from Alex. Do you have guidance around security of MCP servers, both Dust built and custom built?
I have very strong opinions on this. So I imagine you've read, maybe not, about things like MCP, tool poisoning, things like unauthenticated MCP tool use. There's a lot of attacks possible on MTPs. The story around them is very similar to how you would protect APIs, except that now we sort of made it acceptable for everything to have an API and for everything else to try to connect to it. And for most people to not really do due diligence when it comes to integrating with those. So within Dust, as you might have seen, even for companies who have well-documented MCP servers, we have in some cases decided to code our own version of it. We might have done it because we think that capabilities exposed do not fit most of the use cases of our customers or even our own. We're really into dogfooding at Dust, so we call it Dust for Dust. We try to use the product every day. I mean, we have to use the product every day. And so whenever we find an MCP server in the wild, an official one that we're trying to use, it might not have the capabilities we want, or it's documented to not work as it should, maybe send data that's incorrect, or even just plain be insecure and not work, or not support OAuth, not support like any kind of authentication mechanism, or require people to run it on their own machine, basically. So whenever you're building an MCP server, my advice would be like, consider this an API. How would you secure an API? There's already tons of documentation from OWASP on how to do this. And then after that, think about the threat modeling of your specific MCP and what it's going to provide. If we go back to stakes, try to define what's a low stake, what's a high stake, and then move from there. Try to already do all the things you would consider in a normal API, like pagination, for example. Like you need to have this available because an MCP can just explode and make tons of queries to your database, and you would not want to be DDoSed by your own MCP server where your API is actually working perfectly fine.
We have another question from Vittorio as well.
Happy to see you here, Vittorio. What are the procedures in case of a data breach, and what security measures are currently in place? Could you please share your incident response process, detection, containment, notification, remediation, and a summary of the controls implemented to prevent data leaks? I don't think I'm going to have the time to go over all of those. But the idea is that, as you would expect, we're going to have the same story as most tech companies. So EDR plus MDM, NSSIM. We're going to have all the audit logs being shipped to our centralized logging infrastructure system. We have probes on everything, all our endpoints. We have rate limits in the application. We have them outside the application right now at the network level. We do least privilege, as I mentioned, for our internal employees, for our employees. What else do we have? You mentioned, so detection would happen quite fast because it would be automated. And it doesn't only go to me. We have like an on-call rotation with multiple people, different degrees of escalation. Security for us is top of mind and communication is instant. So if we ever detect something happening, whether it's like a reliability incident or a security incident, depending on the nature of it, we would contact the admins or the security point of contact person for specific customers, because we have this on file. Or we would update the status page. We can also send emails to every admin of a Dust workspace. So this would cover the notification part. And we follow the GDPR for this, but we also would do it as soon as it happens and we have information anyways, because we're very transparent as a company. And in terms of remediation, well, it would depend on the nature of the vulnerability, but whenever we detect an incident or there's something, it's obviously all hands on deck, and this is what we solve. So we have clear timelines and SLA timelines and RTOs in contracts, but depending on the nature of the incident itself, it's kind of difficult to debate this. But to prevent data leaks specifically, we have like logical segregation. We only use IDs, so we don't really leak PII in any logs. So, all those security vendor checklists, basically, we are happy to say that we cover 99% of them. The only thing we're not covering right now is going to be actual DLP, because it's a bit difficult to do DLP when some of the information that the customers actually want to surface are actually PII. So what we do and what we say is that it's going to be your responsibility. It's a shared trust model. But what we're definitely doing is we have zero data retention agreements with all the model providers. So contractually speaking, they cannot train on your data and they cannot keep it either. We do not do any training. We use different model providers. So when it comes to things like the data exfiltration as well, if you're thinking about like the lethal trifecta, so data leaks because of an agent and not data leaks because of the architecture, this is where the spaces sort of situation comes around. Is like, if an agent only has access to financial data in the financial space, we expect the people managing this to not be giving it tools that are very exotic with something named like send Slack message to the same exact agent. I guess that covers most of it. Maybe I forgot a couple things, but yeah. Does that cover it, Vittorio? There's a bit of flag on the chat, huh? First time.
Yeah, I think there's a lag. Yes, it
Right.
does. We do have 2 minutes left before the end of the
I think we
session.
can, take a couple more questions.
Yeah. If there's any, feel free to drop them.
All right.
Great. Wow. Thanks again. So, reading
Yes.
it for everyone.
Yeah, so we host on GCP. The regions are going to be Belgium, so Europe West 1, I believe, and maybe 3. I don't know the exact number, but I think it's Belgium and Frankfurt. And then the backups are Europe because it's outside of our control, and I believe for disaster recovery reasons, GCP just, I don't know, like replicates the backups in different European data centers. So even for them, it's kind of difficult for them to pinpoint in which European country, but it's guaranteed to be in Europe, though. Any plans for data hosting in Canada? Not at this time, unfortunately. But you know, if more people ask for it, maybe.
There's in demand. Great. Yeah, I think we're coming to the end of our session. Unless there's a very pressing question that you guys haven't asked yet, now is the time. And I think we're off.
All right.
Um,
Then I guess parting words, maybe like remember again that like security isn't really about like perfect defenses. This is not what we're trying to sell. We're definitely not selling you a magic AI shield. What we're saying is that we sell something that's secure by design. This is what we envision our platform to be. Security is top of mind for us. We try to build new features in the platform that enable users. And one of the biggest risks, even that you might encounter, is to actually not make a decision, because the longer you wait, the more you might end up falling for like shadow AI, and you might have tons of things in place in your organization to prevent your employees from using ChatGPT. But at the end of the day, if they really want to use it, they'll figure out a covert way of using it, like taking a photo of their screen and sending it to ChatGPT. And then you're on your own if this happens, because they can train, they have data retention policies. So I believe there was like a study on it that says that it was already happening for 77% of companies. So yeah, those would be my parting words. We're trying to be as transparent as we can, and to sell you something that's secure by design.
hope that answers all the questions you guys had. And yeah, feel free to just write us if you have any other question. We're available for you guys. But great. Thanks. Thanks for joining. Yeah.
Have a
See you.
great day, night,
Yeah, wherever you are.
wherever you are. Bye.